Good afternoon and welcome to the EUROPA Oil and Gas PLC investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and can be submitted at any time by the Q&A tab situated in the right-hand corner of your screen. Just simply type in your questions and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives in the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and publish responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. I'd now like to hand you over to William Holland, CEO. Good afternoon, sir.
Yes, good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here. I'm joined here today, for those that haven't met Alistair before, by Alistair Stewart, our COO.
Afternoon.
So we'll be presenting together. The main objective of this presentation is to allow sort of retail and shareholders of both retail and institutional shareholders to ask us questions in a live format. So although we have a presentation, we're going to go through this very quickly. The presentation will be on the website, so it's available for everybody to look at. But the main objective here is to be able to answer investors' questions, which is what we're going to spend the majority of the time doing. So quickly, let's just go to our financial year-end performance. These were published on the 23rd of October, so very recent. A couple of things to point out. Our revenue remains stable, slightly up, despite lower oil prices and despite a weaker pound. And that's basically because of the performance that we've received from Wrestle, the production performance of Wrestle. The other thing to point out is that our cash balance for the previous year was 8.3. Of that, 6.9 million was in restricted cash that we used for the Serenity drilling. So our cash balance is actually from unrestricted cash significantly better than it was last year. So this is our UK onshore portfolio. The licenses with the green dot next to them, they are all producing assets. Of those, we operate Crosby Warren and we operate West Thursby. But the majority of the value and the production comes from Wrestle. And we work very closely with the operator at Wrestle and our partner Egdon on that asset, and we're very pleased that it's come back online and it's back into production and producing well. The other thing we'll touch on a little bit today is Cloughton. Cloughton is a discovered gas field in the UK, very close to existing infrastructure, which we hope to be able to progress quickly. So that's Wrestle. I guess the thing about Wrestle, there is a competent person's report that's coming out, and we've been messaging this for some time that this competent person's report is coming out. We're now much more confident that it's going to come out imminently, and when it does come out and that CPR is released, there'll be more news on the back of that about the Wrestle development. So stand by for that. For Cloughton, I mean, the main message here is it's a simple four-way structure. It's discovered gas. It's 192 BCF of gas in place. We are engaging with stakeholders to progress this asset, and we hope to be able to update the market as we do make progress with those various stakeholders. Serenity, similar to Wrestle, we work very closely with the operator there, in this case i3 Energy, on progressing that. Tain has become available as a block now, which is adjacent to Serenity, and we're very interested in that. We'll hope to be able to update the market as we make progress with that in due course. And then the real blue sky here is our gas asset offshore Ireland, adjacent to Corrib. Again, like a lot of our assets, it's near existing infrastructure, the same as Cloughton is, so it's infrastructure led. But it's a tremendous opportunity. We've requested an extension to that, and we are confident that we will get that extension in due course, and we'll update the market once we do. This is the board. I think it's a good balanced board, good complementary skill sets, very engaged. We are set up to grow. We've been saying that our ambition is to grow. For several years now, that continues to be the case, and this is the board with the right skill set to allow the company to do that. With growth in mind, we're very disciplined about what we look at. We are very actively looking at new opportunities at the moment, but we're very disciplined on the ones which we want to pick up, and they've got to be assets which we have an advantage, either a very good knowledge of the geology or the geography, and experience in those areas that we're looking at. So we are very disciplined in our approach to new opportunities. So that was a whistle-stop presentation. I think we'd like to now open it up to Q&A, investor Q&A.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That's great. I'll just bring your camera up to full screen. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions just by using the Q&A tab, which is situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. Alistair, we did obviously receive a number of pre-submitted questions, so I thought I'd start the Q&A session off with these. The first one here reads as follows: when is Wrestle going to start producing again?
I'll answer that. I think, well, hopefully everybody's read the announcement this morning. In fact, I'm sure a lot of people have, with the response of the share price, which has been very positive. But Wrestle has restarted production following the installation of the artificial lift system, which is a jet pump system. In fact, it was commissioned about 6 or 7 days ago, went through initial testing and is now fully operational. And I'm glad to say is functioning as designed, and it should going forward be a very, very reliable system. The well's still cleaning up. We lost fluid to it during the workover and the installation of the pump, but we have recorded rates of over 1,000 barrels a day. We reported a 6-hourly average in the release, but on the whole, it's looking around 25% higher than before the jet pump installation, which is very encouraging.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alistair. Next question here asks, what is the likelihood of an extension to the current license of Inishkia? Also, how much, if any, progress has been made on a potential farm-out agreement? Is there a possibility of losing the license early next year or not?
Well, we paused the farm-out process earlier on in the year, and that was basically because the work that we've done on that, the work during this last period has been seismic reprocessing, and this seismic reprocessing has been cutting edge stuff. It's originally, when we started it, we expected it to take sort of 6 to 8 weeks. It ended up taking us 9 months to complete the work. And during that process, we found out there was actually more that we could do. There was further reprocessing that we could do, but we'd run out of time. So we have spoken to the Irish regulator about this. We've talked to them about what we've done. We've presented what we've done, and we've presented what we would like to do going forward, and made a case for having an extension. We satisfy all of the criteria to justify an extension, and as a result of that, we're confident that we will receive one, and hopefully that will happen before the end of January. Once that does happen, we will then reinitiate the farming process and re-engage with interested parties, and hopefully close out the process during the next year. So we're quietly confident, but we won't know until we receive formal notification from the Irish government.
Perfect. Thank you very much, William. The next question reads as follows: EUROPA are now the operator for the Cloughton gas field site. So when could we expect some positive progress with this site and potential income for the company? What are the timelines expected for drilling and then processing, and then to input that into the national grid?
Yeah, when you say Cloughton gas field site, there's actually no gas field site in existence. There is an old drill site, which the discovery well was drilled from. Unfortunately, it lies 2 kilometers within the national park, and that particular site is no longer accessible to us under current permitting law. Anyway, that aside, Cloughton itself is a gas field. It's historically been viewed as a marginal asset, but of course, under current and projected gas price forecast, it's a material asset. The licensed partners agreed that EUROPA was best resource to deliver on the potential value, and we secured operatorship formally in August. The appraisal and ultimate development of the assets complicated environmentally and from a planning perspective, as the gas, as I'm sure a lot of you are aware, lies beneath a national park and national heritage land. That aside, and the fact that we have already determined that we will not be able to use the original discovery well site, we have had positive discussions with a number of the local authorities and the National Park Authority itself, and we are continuing discussions with landowners with respect to the potential drill site. We expect by the end of the year to have concluded those discussions, and we'll be then reporting on EUROPA's development concept, which will not involve us doing any work in the park, and the appraisal and development program, and along with that, the timing to first gas sales.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alistair. Turning to the next question, could you address directly the shareholder concerns I see regarding board remuneration, in particular the link to performance of the share price and the low level of investment by board members in EUROPA oil and gas shares, which combined is less than holdings of many private investors? If you could provide some colour on that.
Yes, of course. So the EUROPA has a remuneration committee, which is made up of the non-executive board members who assess compensation of the executive and the board as a whole. And in order to guide them in that assessment, the company acquires a report that's produced that looks at our sector and looks at our compensation and compares it to our peers. And this is an independent report which we access, and that's provided as a guide for the RemCom to set the remuneration levels within the business. That report shows that we are in the bottom quartile of directors and executives' compensation. In addition to that, at the beginning of this year, we commissioned a separate independent report to look at the compensation package as a whole, and that includes the long-term incentive package specifically to ensure that there was an alignment with shareholders and stakeholders in the business with how the management were compensated and directors were compensated. That report looked at not only salary, it looked at bonus levels, it looked at how bonus levels were achieved, it looked at the long-term incentive program that was in place. And that concluded that we were, along with the other report, concluded we were bottom end of the spectrum for our peers with regards to directors' compensation. It also concluded that the bonuses were well defined and the KPIs were well defined, and they were also very reasonable and not out of whack at all. And it concluded that the package as a whole was low end. So we are modest. We don't compared to our peers. We do not have high salaries. And when you look at our G&A as a whole, this year we've just reported G&A of £1.8 million. That is also at the bottom end of the spectrum. I've had our brokers assess the market generally and say, well, where do we sit compared to our peers? And we are bottom end. We have a growth ambition. I talked about that earlier on. To have a growth ambition, you need to have the staff to execute on that growth ambition. We've been talking about that for some time now, and we are actively doing that. So there's a minimum amount that we need to operate. We operate assets. There's a minimum number of staff. There's a minimum number of technical experts you need. And with all of that in mind, I think we are a good custodian of shareholder cash.
Perfect. Thank you very much, William. Moving back onto Russell, why has there been so many delays above the original time frame of about 3 weeks to get this site producing oil again? Is it realistic that this current well is ever going to produce an income from the gas currently being flared off? And the final part is, what is a realistic timescale to get the next well sorted and produce an income from the Penistone Flags area? A few parts to that.
Okay. As we have reported, the Russell well is now back on stream. It's taken longer than expected simply due to the availability and lead times of certain equipment, and that's not the jet pump itself, which EUROPA could have supplied to Egdon. We have a spare one. What actually took much longer than anticipated was accessing the elements of the surface equipment, in primarily the actual power fluid triplex pump, which actually drives the whole system, and its associated control systems, and tying it into the existing emergency shutdown system. Anyway, it's back on production now, and we believe the installation will be reliable. With respect to the current well produce income, we've taken some of the gas and we're using it to generate electricity locally on site, but realistically, the gas associated from that single well is too small to justify a connection to the grid in itself. And so monetization of the gas will require further wells and gas production. And the first Penistone well, according to Egdon's current schedule, that will be drilling in Q3 2004, and the tie-in to, I should emphasize that the Penistone is primarily a gas development. So we are looking to tie in and are committed to a gas export scheduled for first gas sales in early 2025, back end of 2024. And at that time, all the associated gas from the Russell 1 well and any further infill wells and the Penistone development wells will be monetized through sale into the national grid.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alistair. The next question reads as follows. A 4th of October article by Energy Voice indicated that Repsol had allowed the Tain license to lapse due to concerns over recovery rates and the potential remaining lifespan of nearby infrastructure. IE3 and EUROPA have highlighted both expected recovery rates of up to 50% and the availability of nearby infrastructure as key reasons why development would be commercially viable. With the operator of Tain now casting doubt on both of these key points, can you please comment on why I3 and EUROPA are still planning to move forward with Serenity/Tain?
Yeah. So the Tain asset was originally operated by Repsol Sinopec, which is a rather unhappy joint venture, which When we drilled the appraisal well on Serenity, and it looked like that we've actually got a unitized opportunity with Serenity Tain, we started discussing with Repsol Sinopec. During that process, Repsol bought Sinopec's interest, so there was a bit of a shuffling of people, and then there was some more shuffling of people thereafter. So it's been quite difficult to get proper engagement with them. When they dropped the license, we were actually very happy that they did that, because we think it's a great opportunity, which Repsol specifically now have been looking to exit the UK for some time. They're actively looking to exit the North Sea, maybe not all of their assets, but the vast majority of them. So having a partner who's in that sort of mode is not necessarily the best partner to have. Now the license is available and is open. We have engaged with the NSTA on that, and we have received a favourable initial feedback. So we are now actively putting together, working closely with i3 Energy, what's needed in order for us to successfully pick up the Tain asset, and then from there we'll look at development. So watch this space. Still a fair bit to go, but we are. Although it doesn't look like much is happening, there's a lot going on behind the scenes.
Perfect. Thank you very much. The next question, again on Repsol, some point you might have covered, but just for more clarity, please could you confirm that there are no problems at Repsol and that it is flowing? If there was a problem, we assume you would RNS. When will we know the revised flow rates?
Well, we've issued the RNS, but it's not because there's a problem. It's because it's back on and flowing. So that's all great, and I'm sure everybody's pleased to see that. I mean, we will be issuing a further update once the well has cleaned up and we've settled down. I mean, the jet pump has a huge capacity to pump the well. We've got to find a sweet spot which is good for the reservoir and the facilities. But we'll issue an update in terms of stabilized rates and probably within the next 2 or 3 weeks.
Perfect. That's great, Alistair. The next question is really around directors and asks if it's necessary to have so many directors.
Well, as I mentioned before, I think our board is actually quite a balanced board, and everybody that sits on the board brings a different element, a different skill set to the board and the decision making of the board. There is definitely a balance between skills, cost, and also governance. The more directors you have, the better governance you ultimately have with a business. With 2 executive directors and 3 non-executive directors, I think that's a pretty good balance. And as I said, they all contribute. They all bring something to the table. And it's worth pointing out that one of those directors, non-executive director, Simon Oddie, who was originally, when he came on to join the company, non-executive chairman, he only went to CEO because on an interim basis. And then COVID hit, and that interim basis lasted much longer than he expected. So he does provide some continuity there, but you know, his original role, he effectively came out of retirement to become the full-time CEO, and now he's gone back into a sort of non-executive role, which he's much happier with, and does a very good job in questioning and challenging us. So it's about that right balance, and I don't think that it's excessive for a company of our size. I think it's the right size.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. Another one on directors. Why don't the directors buy more shares? This will show that they're fully committed to the company and will send out a clear message.
Yeah. So I mean, as directors, there are only certain times that we are allowed to buy shares. You have to wait for open periods. I actually bought shares on one of the few open periods that we've had, which is when we announced our year-end results a few weeks ago. I bought just under 1 million shares, and prior to that, earlier in the year in March, I bought just over 1 million shares. So I'm very dedicated to the company, and when I have the opportunity and I have available cash, I will continue to buy shares in EUROPA.
That's great. Thank you very much, William. How much progress has been made with the NSTA with regards to the Blake Tain Serenity area? How likely is it that this area is going to be developed by the I3 Europa partnership, and what realistic timescales could this be?
I sort of mentioned that earlier on in the previous question, but we are engaged, working very closely with I3. We are engaged with the NSTA on this. We have been told, people will probably not be aware that there's a 33rd licensing round going on, and of all of the licenses that were up, that were available, a proportion of those have been awarded. The rest of them are expected to be awarded in the coming months. Once that happens, then the NSTA will have the capacity required to look at out-of-round applications. We are actively working with I3 to prepare for that as we speak. So it'll be next year.
Great, thank you very much. Would you consider a bid of 2.6p per share for the company?
Yeah, it's not appropriate for us to comment on that at all, I'm afraid. So pass.
No worries at all. If you look back over many years, half and full year reports which speak of solid achievement and great prospects, mirror that against the company's share price, and the two don't tally. How do you measure a success?
So I mean, we're quite. If you look at our annual report, we're quite open with what we're trying to do and what we're trying to achieve, and what is success. I mean, we work very closely with Egdon, as we said, and bringing Wrestle online is success. There are share price performance is one aspect of it, and obviously it's a very, very important aspect of that for shareholders and investors. But we are trying to be good custodians of hydrocarbons, so we're trying to do things in the right way, in a responsible way, in an environmentally sensitive way. Unfortunately, the sector as a whole has suffered from this this general ESG investing sentiment that a lot of institutional investors have adopted recently. And I would argue that if you're a money manager, and I used to be one at one point, that you have a responsibility to invest in hydrocarbon oil and gas companies that are responsible oil and gas companies, and do things properly and do things in the right way, and think about their other stakeholders. And we certainly do that. And now, if you are an ESG investor, you should be investing in oil and gas in companies that do that, because as a world, as a globe, we're consuming 103 million barrels a day, more than we've ever produced before. So if you're a money manager and you don't invest in companies that do that, then you're allowing companies that are less responsible to flourish. So that's a separate argument that I have with fund managers on a regular basis. But look at other sort of success things. We did bring we've been very open about the fact we're looking to build a business, and we brought Serenity and we invested in Serenity. Now it's a great shame. I bought shares just before we sputtered Serenity because I really did believe in it. It wasn't a success, but that's the nature of the oil and gas game. Some things work, some things don't. If Serenity had worked, we'd be 10 times the size that we are today, and everyone would be going brilliant. The fact is it didn't, but we brought the opportunity to the investors. We gave the investors the opportunity to have exposure to that. And if you look at the share price performance on the lead up to that, it went from a penny up to over 3 pence at one point in anticipation of success. Now some people point out that high point, that 3 pence high point, as where we were to where we are now. That's absolutely incorrect. We only hit that high point because Serenity was on the table, because we'd invested in Serenity at the beginning and brought that opportunity, that potential exposure to shareholders. And we're going to continue to do that, because that's fundamentally what we think our job is to use the skills that we have to identify really good risk reward opportunities and give our shareholders the exposure to one of those will come in, and then we'll all do very well and we'll be very happy.
Perfect. Thank you very much for that. What can you commit to doing to help Egdon provide more realistic project timescales and updates on progress on this when Wrestle projects overrun?
Well, we are working very hard on that, and in fact, it takes up a degree of resource from us, which we feel is important because of the importance of the asset to us. And myself personally, I've been working directly alongside the Egdon team to increase their resource and help them to move things forward. Their project timescales are have changed, and we're doing our best to make them as realistic and aggressive as they can be. On a direct issue there for the industry is the permitting side. We need permits. We need planning permissions to drill, and certainly the Environment Agency is proving to be a huge problem, not just for ourselves onshore, but offshore as well. It's taking us in the order of 8 months to get permits through. The EA is aware of this, and we're working with them to try and alleviate the situation. But a lot of the time, it's the authorities that are driving our project's timescales now, rather than the companies themselves.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Alistair. Can you provide an update on any plans to improve production from the non-wrestle wells?
Well, we're continually looking at and managing our well stock. The well stock that we have outside wrestle is, as I'm sure many people here are aware, very mature. We are producing those wells as reliably as all well stock will do, and we're pushing them as hard as they will produce. I must say, most of our focus, apart from keeping the production reliable and stable, is on these particular assets, minimizing the operating expenditure on them in order to extend field life, and that's where we will continue to work in that area. We don't see much opportunity for or commercial return in expending money on trying to improve production from these wells. We think they're giving the best that they possibly can.
Perfect. Thank you very much. That actually concludes the pre-submitted questions. As you can see, we received questions throughout today's live presentation, and thank you to the investors for submitting those. Could I just ask you to read out those questions and give responses where it's appropriate to do so, and then I'll pick up from you both at the end.
Okay. When will the next wrestle production well be drilled? Well, I think we've already answered that. I mean, it is scheduled to Q3 2024 next year. We of course will be trying to accelerate that. Yeah.
Another question from Richard S. says, for William, Hayco taking over Egdon Resources, a good move? What extra can they bring to the table, and how are you finding them to deal with so far? So for those of you not aware, Hayco is an American company run by a gentleman called George Yates. George Yates has been very active in the UK sector. He's a big believer in the shale story. he's still very active. He obviously acquired. He was already a shareholder in Egdon, and he acquired the remaining shares and took them private. He's an oil man. He's from Midland, West Texas. For those of you that know the US industry, that's the heart of the Permian Basin. It's a very active area. He's a good guy. He's a very decent person. He brings with him, with the rest of HAECO, more depth in resources. So Egdon have now got more people they can call on as and when they need to, in order to help develop their the skill sets that they need to support the operation. So I'm optimistic that it'll help them. I'm optimistic it'll speed things up, and I know that George and his team and the board of HAECO are enthusiastic about the UK generally and want to be supportive. So I see it as a good thing. The next one's for you.
Okay, how important is health and safety at Wrestle, and what protocols are in place? Well, it's actually very important, and I would say from our perspective as a non-operated joint venture partner, I've been very impressed with the health and safety and environmental record that Egdon. I mean, Egdon historically had been more of an exploration than a production company, but they've put a huge effort into meeting their health, safety, and environmental permits, and have all the necessary protocols in place. I think that's part and parcel because the operations management is actually led by an ex-health and safety manager himself. So if Egdon had a strength, it is very much in terms of health, safety, and environmental management. Yes.
Perfect. Well, Alistair, thank you very much for that. I think you've actually addressed all those questions you can from investors. And of course, the company will review all the questions submitted today and will publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to the company, Will, could I just ask you for a few closing comments?
Yes, thank you very much. It's been, I believe it's the first time that we've done one of these platforms. I think it's.
Well, it is for me.
It is for me as well. So it's Alice and I's first time doing one of these. I've actually done one before, but not on camera. It was more typing back. I think it's part of our commitment to engage with our shareholder base and be as open and as transparent as possible. There's obviously a balance between responding to shareholders and actually getting on with the day-to-day job. So if you do have any further questions, please be happy to submit them. If you don't have a chance to submit them through this platform, we have our mail at europaoil.com email address. You're very free and welcome to submit questions on that. But I will remind everybody that we are trying to actually work on progressing opportunities. So if we don't always respond, it either means that it's because it's something which is in the public domain already, and we think it's already addressed. But hopefully we are doing a better job of communicating than we have done in the past. Alice and I both think it's a great opportunity. It's a great story. We're a really good platform. We've got the right team in place now. We're looking at some very interesting opportunities, and I hope everybody will continue to be supportive of the business. It is our AGM coming up on the 23rd of November. Hopefully we'll see some shareholders there, get to meet you in person, and yes, I look forward to meeting some of you then.
Perfect. Will, Alistair, thank you once again for updating investors today. Could I please ask investors not to close this session, as you'll now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few moments to complete, but I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team of Europa Oil and Gas PLC, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation, and good afternoon to you all.
Bye.